Automobilista 2 beta has now been released, and it's generated quite a lot of interest in the sim racing community. In this video, I'm going to be answering some of the most common questions I see about our newest racing title. Let's do this. What's going on, guys? It's Mike for SimRacing604, and as mentioned in the intro, Automobilista 2 beta has been released. So the sim racing community, there's been a lot of talk in the social media surrounding that about AMS 2. It's been generally well received, but there are still a lot of questions floating around, so I'm going to do my best to answer them. And we'll start off with the release date. What's the release date? Officially March 31st. It wouldn't surprise me to see that slip just a little bit, but officially Ritza has said they want to have it out this month for public release. Why is it so expensive? This reaction, I think, was stemming from the people who were looking at beta buy-in, and beta plus season pass plus the base game, 120 US. Absolutely, it's on the high side of things, but Ritza is saying that the full release version will be $49 US or $49.99 US, so that is much more in line with what you'd expect to pay for a racing sim. Next one, is this just Project Cars 2 AMS Edition? I get where that comes from. Visually, obviously, borrowing the Madness engine, it looks a lot like Project Cars 2, but I can tell you the title actually has a lot more of its DNA in common with the first AMS in terms of the drivability of the cars, the sounds, the content, a lot more in common with AMS 1 than it does in Project Cars 2, but obviously visually it is very much Project Cars 2, and if you're watching videos, that's the sense you're going to get, but no, far more in common with AMS 1 than with PC2. Does it drive as well as AMS 1? I don't like to do this comparison for a couple of reasons. Number one, this is still in beta, so we don't know how this is actually going to feel once the dust settles, plus the fact that everyone has a sort of different sense of how sims feel. I got asked to compare this to ACC or to R Factor 2, sort of the top driving games, but the thing is, our personal experiences with how they drive can vary. Some people cannot drive ACC at all. Some people feel that R Factor 2 is understeer. Whatever it is, it's difficult for me to say that one is as good as another, but I can tell you I feel this has about 80 to 90% of its sort of drivability in common with the first AMS, for whatever that's worth. How are the physics and force feedback? Fantastic. I just alluded to this a second ago. The force feedback is very informative. There's a lot of feedback from the tires. I've been spending a lot of time with the Ultima driving it, and it gives a ton of intelligent feedback for oversteer. You can correct for it. The curbs are very detailed, and the physics of all the cars, particularly the Ultima and the Metal Moro AJR, just insanely well done cars and so much fun to drive. How are the graphics? Obviously, you guys have seen them. They're really great. Borrowing the Madness engine turned out to be a great thing. I gotta admit, I was skeptical of using it, but it seems to be working out great, and visually everything looks awesome. How are the sounds? The sounds much more in common with AMS 1. I personally really enjoyed the sounds of AMS 1. I know like Chris Hay did not, so I think it depends on where you're coming from. If you like the sounds in AMS 1, you're going to like the sounds in AMS 2 is the long and short of it. What is the full car and track list? I will drop a link in the description to this video to the February developer update from Ritza, which laid out the content. It's a lot in common with the first AMS, but there's a lot more to come. If you look at the roadmap, there's some very, very interesting things to come. Lots of new tracks, lots of old tracks, good variety of tracks, and basically cars from all different classes, from open wheelers to prototypes to, classic, what would you call them? Anyway, just affordable racers. There's a lot going on, so Ritza has really put out a broad range of options for the content here. What is the roadmap for DLC and free updates? Again, you can check the description in the video. You can check the link, click the link in the description to this video and see the February developer roadmap from Ritza and get all those answers. But there's a lot of exciting things coming in the next 6 to 8 months roughly. And lots of free updates for what that's worth as well. Why are the system requirements so high? That's one thing I can't figure out. Ritza has set a very high bar for system requirements for AMS2. You can see my system specs in the description to this video. I'm not running anything new. I'm not running anything overly powerful. It's an i5 processor with a 1080 video card. So it's, as time goes on, that's slipping further and further back in the acceptable level. But I'm able to run in single screen ultra everything, and it looks beautiful. In VR I turn things down, but I'm able to crank super sampling up all the way, and it looks beautiful as well, and I've got no issues with frame rates whatsoever. So I think the system requirements are set a bit high. How is the VR experience? VR experience, I just mentioned it, it's awesome, really great. I'm turning the super sampling up, it's very immersive, the sounds are fantastic, and the Madness engine really lends itself well to VR, so I'm very happy with it. Will there be mods? This is a tough one. I'm thinking probably by the end of 2020 we'll know one way or the other. I'm sure as soon as this game is released, if it's not happening already, some of the better mod creators are already looking into whether or not AMS2 will be able to support their mods. It's still up in the air very much, but I'm very hopeful that there will be mods. Probably cars, if anything. I don't know that tracks will be an option. Project Cars 2, using the Madness engine, did get some mods, and it's still getting mods for what that's worth. It's a bit of a runaround though. It's not like Assetto Corsa or AMS1, where it's just like easily moddable and there's a ton of mods available. R-Factor 2 is like that as well, but at the same time it's not the inverse. It's not iRacing or Race Room where there's just no mods possible, so we'll see what happens. But I think this game is going to be very well received, and I think it's going to gain huge popularity, and I think the mod creators are going to see the sales potential in creating something for AMS2. So like I said, we'll probably know by Q3 or Q4 of 2020 whether that's possible. Do I recommend people buy it? So this is kind of the big one. Do I recommend people buy it? The short answer is yes. I think it's great. I think the only people that I wouldn't recommend this to is people who didn't like AMS1. This has, again, a lot of its DNA in common with the first Automobilista, so if you just weren't a fan of that, there's probably not a lot of redeeming qualities to AMS2 over AMS1, other than the graphics, of course, but so much of its DNA is in common with the first one. If you didn't like how it sounded, how it drove, or the content, well, you're going to be saddled with a lot the same this time around. So those are the only people I couldn't see liking it. For everybody else, however, I think you have a tremendous driving sim that sounds great, that looks great, great VR support. It's got triples support. They're working on a multiplayer ranking system, so there's huge amounts of potential here, and I think that I can safely give this a strong recommendation. I think it's going to be great, and a lot of people in the sim racing community are going to love it. So going on to some of your questions that you submitted to me. Is there a career mode? Nothing I can see so far. This is something I hope Ritza can focus on maybe into 2021. The roadmap is very aggressive for 2020, so I don't think there's going to be a lot of room there for expansion of a career mode in 2020, but it's something they could look at in the future. This sim would lend itself perfectly to a career mode. It's got everything from karts on all the way to, you know, huge power open wheelers, so it'd be great to have a career mode, but I just don't see it happening right away, and I don't think it will have any sort of career mode other than championship mode at launch. How did the classic F1 cars feel? Awesome. Really awesome. I haven't tried the vintage ones, the ones going all the way back to the 60s, but the ones from the 80s and 90s feel awesome. I was a big fan of them for AMS1. I thought they were underrated in the world of open wheelers in sim racing, and AMS2, they feel great still. This question, how does it drive compared to other sims like Assetto Corsa, R-Factor 2, that kind of thing? Again, I don't want to rank it, but for me personally, just so you know where I'm coming from, I would put Automobilista 1, Assetto Corsa Competizione, and R-Factor 2 as sort of my top 3 driving sims in some order, depending on the hardware I'm running that day, depending on the car I'm driving that day. They all drive great. I would put AMS2 in that tier Maybe it ranks at the bottom, maybe it ranks at the top. I don't know. We'll know when it gets out of, we'll have a better sense of it when it gets out of beta. But for me personally, I would put it certainly in the upper tier of sims. But again, that's just my personal take. I think it feels great. Is there triple screen support? Yes, I talked about that. I don't run triples personally, but there is some level of triple screen. There's a triple screen menu, I should say, which will allow you obviously to customize things and get your triples running. And finally, how is the AI? The AI in beta, not quite there yet. You guys have probably seen that in the footage. Braking hard to avoid rear-ending somebody coming into the turn, and then I get absolutely left in the dust coming out of the turn. It's something I'm sure they'll get through by the time this game gets to full release. AMS 1, the AI was absolutely fantastic. I would put it up against the AI in any other sim, and I'm sure the same algorithms will be applied eventually to Automobilista 2. So that's going to do it, guys. I plan to sort of back off on the AMS2 content, quite frankly. I want to not totally saturate the sim racing social media front in relation to this game. It's nice to have that sort of anticipation and leave a lot to mystery when you guys do eventually get your hands on this game. So again, my plan is to sort of back things off a little bit. But definitely I appreciate the support on the first video, guys. And yeah, if there's other questions, please drop it in the comments. I'll do my best to address it either in a future video or by replying to your comment. Thanks guys so much for watching, and we will see you next time.